This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, and Team Valor. For a moment, Metal simply stares the E-series, unable to keep the suspicion from his gaze, as a haven for the Doctor's creation sounds almost too good to be true, the sort of thing Eggman himself would concoct to lull them into a false sense of security, though as he looks into the earnest green eyes of this android, so like his friend Gamma's, he finds himself inclined to believe him. The Bluebot then attempts to stand, wanting to get a better look at his surroundings, albeit with some difficulty, though when he begins to wobble, a helping hand reaches out to steady him, with Metal being surprised to see that his savior is none other than Mecha Sonic. In a gentle voice, Mecha encourages Metal not to push himself too hard, though all the same he does not withdraw his hand, supporting his doppelganger as he takes his first few shambling steps up the beach, allowing the landscape beyond to come into view. This is the Death Egg. Or rather, it is the crashed ruins, which have partially been swallowed by the sea. Though even in its ragged state, Metal recognizes this place well from his time here during the Angel Island incident. From beside him, Mecha comments that it's strange, isn't it? That the symbol of Eggman's tyranny would be repurposed as the sanctuary of those he had wronged, though he supposes they all have Metal and Sonic the Hedgehog to thank for this place, since it was them who brought the Death Egg down. Turning to face Mecha, Metal gives him a questioning look, uncertain as to why the other android is being so amiable with him. Last time they met, Metal, tried to kill Mecha, and for all intents and purposes succeeded, blowing him to bits and sending his broken body crashing into the ocean. Understanding the unspoken question, Mecha simply answers that neither of them is who they were back then when they were still in the thrall of their creator, and that he holds no grudge from his past life. So if his brother would allow him, he'd like to start fresh. Metal is at a loss for words, having never imagined anyone, let alone a former enemy, would name him brother, though when Mecha extends a hand to shake, Metal takes it. Turning back to the beach, Mecha then begins making introductions, stating the Green E-Series is E117 Sigma, their founder and the de facto leader of this community, though for obvious reasons, they try to avoid any sort of system in which one android holds power over another. Instead, everyone simply pitches in and tries to help improve the island however they can. Toddling up to join them, Sigma agrees with Mecha's summary, while adding that they still have a long way to go before they can finally call this island fit for habitation, since most of the corridors and rooms near the outer wall of the Death Egg, which are now the lower levels of the island, were badly caved in during re-entry and the crash landing into the ocean, making them inaccessible without excavation. Currently, that and the re-establishment of vital systems such as communications and repair bays are a top priority, though it has been slow going, as currently, Mecha and Sigma are the only ones with the physical capabilities needed for such hard labor. In a neutral tone, Mecha replies that he could assist them, though it is presented more as a statement of fact than an offer, as in truth, his motives are not entirely altruistic, since the expansion of this place aligns with his goals to save more of their kind, considering he will need a place to send those he saves. Ergo, it is logical and mutually beneficial that he do what he can to accelerate the excavation and repairs. Laying out this logic to the others, he is met with appreciative acceptance in spite of his claims of selfishness, with Sigma promising to do all he can to make this place home for any other badniks Metal sends their way, and perhaps in time, even for the green-eyed speedster himself. Metal had never really considered the idea of having a home, so to speak, since homes are something for organics, while he as a machine can exist wherever he is required to fulfill his purpose. Though, as he meets the earnest gaze of Sigma and the steady one of Mecha, he finds the notion to be an appealing one. And so the work begins, with Metal following Mecha and Sigma down into the labyrinthine tunnels of the Death Egg to begin clearing away scrap and assorted debris that has so far impeded excavation. It is trying physical labor even for an android, though following his brush with death at the hands of Mecha Knuckles, he is more determined than ever to see his purpose fulfilled, pushing forward at top speed, often through the use of his jet engine or spin dashes, in order to more quickly clear a path. However, this way of doing things often puts him far ahead of the other two, who prefer to act more methodically, hanging back and ensuring a space is completely cleared before moving on to the next. Metal also thinks he sees amusement in Mecha and Sigma's eyes whenever he does this, and so a few days into the endeavor decides to inquire what in his behavior the pair find comical. In a placating tone, Mecha replies that it seems his brother has not let go of all his old programming yet, as in spite of all the growth he has clearly gone through since Angel Island, he still feels the need to always go fast and speed through every problem he faces in order to reach the next objective. Puzzled, Metal asks what is wrong with that, as his way is efficient, though with a faint chuckle, Mecha replies that while this is true, it is not necessary here. Part of being free is being free to go at his own pace, so for one who has always burdened himself with haste, perhaps it will do him some good to learn how to slow down and enjoy the place he is, instead of always looking to the horizon. This gives Metal food for thought, as logically he knows his brother is correct, since stillness is a means through which a unit can conserve energy, allowing for greater functionality later. However, on an emotive level, he has always despised slowing down, as it feels like failing, with stillness being tantamount to death. Even just the memories of those months lying dormant in the forest still fills him with rage. But as Mecha had said, perhaps this is simply a byproduct of being Eggman's tool, a control mechanism built in to force him to keep completing objectives for his master until he breaks. This will require reflection. Though thankfully, Metal has plenty of time for it, being able to ponder long and hard as he works, now alongside Mecha and Sigma, adopting their methodical manner, with him even asking them both about their own experiences overcoming their Eggman programming. Through this he learns that their stories are quite similar to his own, having been forced to come to terms with the Doctor's betrayal after being abandoned. Like him, Mecha had gone through a period of what he later came to recognize as depression and denial, wanting to return to Eggman and get revenge on both Sonic and Metal, though thankfully, Sigma had been there to help him through it, teaching him to let go of his anger and move on from the Doctor. Ever the modest one, Sigma credits Mecha with overcoming this on his own, though here the larger Sonic duplicate refutes his mentor, stating that he could not have done it without him, a claim which makes Metal think of Gamma and how much this place would have meant to him. This only inspires Metal to work harder, as he wants this island to be the sort of perfect haven his friend would have wanted for their kind, though this is kept in check by Sigma, as part of taking things slow also means resting regularly, since while they do not require it in the same way organics do, over-repetition of the same motion without breaks will cause their joints to wear out, and considering they do not have any control as to what spare parts they will find inside the Death Egg or will wash up on the beach, it is unwise to risk incurring undue damage when there is no time limit on their task. During these rest periods, Metal often returns to the surface to check on Mecha Knuckles, who following his own awakening on the beach, had taken to brooding on the far side of the island, furious at being unable to escape and return to his master. As a result, each time he sees Metal, he shoots him a venomous, hate-filled glare, clearly viewing it as his fault that he's stranded here, though his gaze is seldom directed at the blue bot's face, instead generally being pointed at his torso, or more specifically, his jet engine, since currently, it is one of the only viable means of leaving the island. Knowing the anguish Mecha Knuckles is going through, as it is the same turmoil he faced during those long months alone in Mystic Ruins, Metal freely invites him to fight him again if he thinks it will give him a sense of meaning, though the red-eyed ruffian should be warned, he has no intention of giving up his jet engine or his life to a pawn of Eggman. In his eagerness to leave, and his hubristic belief that he is the Doctor's greatest creation, Mecha Knuckles is quick to accept this challenge, coming at Metal with everything he has. While for the most part Metal has no issue with this, allowing the Echidnabot to go all out, he does draw the line at missile attacks, using his ring spark field or overdrive to disable Mecha Knuckles whenever he attempts these, as he will not have the brash brawler causing further cave-ins or setbacks for the excavation team because of a grudge match. Being smart enough to understand what Metal is doing, and hating the feeling of having their fights cut short, Mecha Knuckles eventually stops attempting these moves, instead focusing on taking his nemesis down with the power of his fists alone. However, just as it was on Sky Sanctuary, the pair appear roughly even in strength, even if their respective specialties are different. As a result, these duels generally end inconclusively, with both fighters walking away battered, but a little wiser as to how the other one operates, with plans to apply this knowledge when their clash resumes the next time they meet. Though they never intervene, Sigma and Mecha are to say the least curious about these fights, with Sigma asking Metal why he continues to antagonize Mecha Knuckles in the aftermath of a particularly brutal showdown. In a factual tone, Metal replies that he is not. He is simply trying to fulfill his purpose by saving the Echidnabot, since he sees now that reasoning with him in his current state will not work, so instead, he will attempt to speak to him in his own language, that is to say, combat. Still not entirely convinced, Sigma expresses worry that with these clashes only growing more heated, they will eventually result in one of their deaths, though just as factually, Metal states that he will not allow that, as he is not fighting with the intent of destroying his opponent, but rather allowing him to unburden himself from his anger and confusion by focusing it all in one place, Metal himself. Speaking up now, Mecha queries if his brother is attempting to recreate the effect of their fight, except with the roles reversed, as he recalls Metal citing it as a turning point, though in response, the smaller Sonic android states that this is only half of his reasoning. He is also drawing inspiration from a battle he watched Sonic have with a monster named Chaos. In that fight, Sonic had more than enough power to destroy the beast, though he refrained, instead allowing it to fight until its rage had subsided, only ending it then. Likewise, he intends to continue engaging in these duels with Mecha Knuckles until such a time as the red-eyed ruffian's rage has been quelled, however long that may take. Recognizing the importance of this to Metal, Sigma and Mecha do not challenge him about his plan again, instead simply watching from a distance each time the Bluebot goes off to engage in his little scraps, as they begin referring to them, and greeting him when he returns, having evidently been unsuccessful once again at calming Mecha Knuckles' fury. Nonetheless, Metal does not allow himself to be deterred or distracted, either in his attempts at helping the Echidna android or his commitment to Mecha and Sigma, with him working diligently in both endeavours. While the former remains as seemingly unattainable as ever, the latter at least is making headway, with a trio of robots clearing out more and more of the Death Egg as the weeks tick into months, so that soon they have enough space vacated they can actually begin converting some of the cleared rooms into living quarters and other amenities that will make this place feel more like a home. One such addition is the assigning of a name to this place, as just like them, it has become something more than Eggman's base, and therefore deserves a designation of its own that reflects that. As the leader, it seems only right that Sigma be the one to decide on the name, and after much thought and consultation with the handful of ex-badniks who have come to inhabit this place, he ultimately settles on Scrapnik Island. And so it is that Sigma and Mecha begin the process of leading their fellow Scrapniks down through the corridors they have cleared out, while Metal watches on, an unmistakable sense of pride in their achievement. Soon he intends to return to the outside world, so he can begin growing their ranks, though as he spots a pair of familiar red eyes glaring at him, he knows that he still has one more duty to discharge here on the island. Turning to face Mecha Knuckles, Metal states that it's rare to see him so far from his usual brooding spot, and while the mechanical fist fighter remains as silent as ever, Metal has no problem understanding his motive after all the time they have spent together locked in combat. By leaving his usual domain to seek Metal out, he is making a declaration. Either he will claim the other android's jet engine in this fight, or he will die in the attempt. The time for stalemates is past. Having no reason to hesitate, and planning to strike before his foe can get his bearings, Mecha Knuckles lunges at Metal, though to his dismay the wily speedster is already prepared for him, sidestepping his punch and tripping him with a swift kick to the shin. This sends the Echidnabot stumbling, as Metal proceeds to spin dash into his back, though by burying the spikes of his gauntlet into the sand, Mecha Knuckles is able to use this to his advantage, transferring the momentum of Metal's blow into speed as he spins in a wide arc, coming out behind his attacker and landing a surprise shoulder barge. As a result, it is Metal who lands face first in the sand, while Mecha Knuckles stands over him, though being the quicker of the pair, when the gunmetal grey Echidna swings what is meant to be a finishing blow, the Bluebot is able to activate his black shield, warding off the attack and allowing him to strike back by shooting upwards with his jet engine and delivering a bicycle kick to Mecha Knuckles' chin, which sends them both skyward. Somersaulting in midair, Metal is the first to touch down, though by employing Knuckles' gliding ability, Mecha Knuckles is able to mitigate any damage, slowing his descent before picking up speed again the moment his feet touch the ground as he charges at Metal once more. Flying backwards, Metal is able to dodge the 1-2 punch that follows, with this only aggravating Mecha Knuckles further as he follows after his foe, his swings growing more and more wild with each successive blow. Finally, Metal reaches the shallows, and so comes to a stop, with the Echidnabot assuming that he is afraid of going beyond that point, a cowardly defect they do not share. Raising both fists, Mecha Knuckles charges, ready to end things, though still Metal does not move, allowing his rival to close in and swing both punches before his arms come to life, shooting up and wrapping around the Metal Echidna's wrists. At such close range, they are almost nose to nose, with red eyes staring into green and green into red. This is the moment Metal had been waiting for, and so with a sense of finality, he activates his ring spark field. At once, paralyzing pain shoots through Mecha Knuckles' body, far greater than any other time he has been struck with the attack, with him collapsing to the ground a moment later as Metal releases his hold on his wrists. As he falls, Mecha Knuckles at last understands the more analytical android's plan. He had lured him into the water to make his electrical attack more powerful, while also hovering above the surface so he would not be affected. Tricky jerk. Briefly, Mecha Knuckles wonders if Metal intends to leave him here until his circuitry gets overloaded with water and he rusts away, though it seems the Bluebot has other plans for his rival, waiting until the electricity is dissipated before grabbing him by the leg and dragging him once more onto the beach. As he does this, he begins to speak, telling Mecha Knuckles about his strategy coming into their fight, with this quickly morphing into the story of his time with the excavation team, along with the adventures he had with Sonic and his friends, and the lessons he learned from both groups. Finally, he speaks of his purpose, of the long, often painful journey started by Eggman's betrayal, which led him to the decision that he would save their kind, and how this includes helping Mecha Knuckles accept the reality of their situation. The Doctor has forsaken him, just like everyone else on this island, though this does not mean he has no reason to exist, but instead that he must find his own purpose. By now, Mecha Knuckles has regained access to his motor functions, and so scrambles to his feet, though to Metal's surprise, he does not attempt to attack him, instead turning his back on the Bluebot and walking away, though as he watches him go, Metal is sure he sees a change in the way the Grey Echidna carries himself. Following this, a few days pass as Metal resumes his excavation work, while Mecha Knuckles stands sentinel on the edge of the island, staring out at the sea, his gaze not even wavering when Metal comes to check on him. Then, on the third morning, something happens that surprises the Sonic android. When he approaches Mecha and Sigma to begin the day's work, he finds a new face standing beside them, Mecha Knuckles. Though he is silent as ever, everyone understands the meaning of this gesture, and so as they descend into the bowels of Scrapnik Island, it is as a quartet rather than a trio. Due to his large spiked fists, Mecha Knuckles proves himself to be a considerable asset in breaking down pieces of metal and concrete, with the group's progress increasing dramatically in the weeks following his addition. While at first he exhibits the same haste Metal did, he takes the notion of slowing down far quicker, syncing up well with his compatriots. This is not the only change that Mecha Knuckles undergoes in this time, however, as it seems he has given up on his plans to escape, instead choosing to finally accept his place here. Part of this entails taking a new name for himself, as a means of differentiating himself not only from what Eggman intended him to be, but also Mecha Sonic, now they're spending so much time together, with the Echidnabot finally settling on Scrap, both in reference to him embracing being a Scrapnik, and the fights with Metal that helped him get to where he is now. Speaking of which, since joining the excavation team, Scrap no longer challenges Metal to fight, or even glares at him when he comes into view. Instead, when their eyes meet, the Blue Bot sees one who views him as a rival still, but also at the very least, an ally. And so, time passes, with Metal's inbuilt chronometer informing him that he has been on Scrapnik Island for approximately a year. Though he knows he should leave now that he has achieved all his objectives on the island, he finds himself disinclined to do so, and while it is easy to justify this as an attempt to defy his objective-focused programming, he cannot hide the true motive from himself. He does not want to leave this place that has become a home to him, to part ways with the machines he has come to consider as friends. It is illogical, but it is also the truth. Unfortunately, fate is not so kind as to allow Metal a permanent reprieve, as one day while he and his friends are fixing up the communications hub so they can make contact with the outside world, the video monitors all burst to life. On each screen is the same figure, Dr. Eggman, and while at first the group wonder if this is simply an old recording from the base's databanks, it soon becomes apparent that this is not the case, with the Doctor seemingly making a worldwide broadcast, in which he uses an orbital laser cannon to destroy half the moon, before announcing the people of Earth have 24 hours to accept him as their unquestioned ruler, lest he unleash this weapon upon the world. In the aftermath of this declaration, none of the four Scrapniks speak, all well aware of what Eggman Dominion would mean, not only for their island, but for the world as a whole. It is a grim prospect, and not one Metal is willing to accept, with him stating that he will leave at once to confront their creator and put a stop to this scheme. This naturally worries his friends, as they are not blind to the danger such a mission will entail, though seeing the fierceness in Metal's glowing green eyes, they do not attempt to stop him. Instead, they simply follow him to the surface, and watch as he begins his takeoff sequence, with Mecha urging his brother to take care of himself. Solemnly, Metal promises that he will, and that he'll be back as soon as he can. Then, with his eyes fixed once more on the horizon, though for very different reasons from before, he takes flight. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.